Hello, friends. I am Chevee. Welcome to my shed. How are you today? How's life in your world? How's things where you are? Hope it's fantastic. Everything here, fabulous, fabulous. I should have brought my laptop. um, I think I told you last week that I was getting a new laptop. I got it. I should have brought it and showed it to you. Whatever. I got a Lenovo IdeaPad 5 with the AMD Ryzen 6850 or something, like whatever the HS. It's a nice laptop. Um, but the point is, I got it for a specific reason, and that is my business, the software that I've taken back. I need to have it for that. And I also coyly mentioned last week that there are opportunities on the table for me that I might take advantage of. Um, I have taken advantage of those opportunities, or at least I am in the process of taking advantage of those opportunities. And it was an opportunity that spawned out of a conversation with a friend who said he needed some help with something, and I said, I think I can help you with that. And we talked about it, and I think it's a go. We'll see, but I don't want to tell you what the opportunity is yet. I don't want to tell you. We'll talk about that when I'm ready to talk about that. Exactly what I'm doing, if I'm going to do it. We're not at that point yet. Right now, we're still in the let's see what's happening stage. But all of that comes down to I need to learn a new thing. And that new thing is the Vue framework, JavaScript framework. Now, I have talked poorly about frameworks a lot in the past, and for the most part, that still stands. I'm not a big fan. But, big but on this one, that typically is, I'm typically reserve that sort of thinking for things that are static pages, static websites with some forms and some data. You don't need to have some bloated framework running all of that. Because, you know, Vue itself, when you launch a new Vue project, it's like 20 some thousand files to just say hello world on a screen. Now, if you're using Vue to say hello world on a screen, you're probably doing web development wrong. Like, don't do that. But for the particular thing that I'm working on, it's a very intensive thing that requires a whole lot of application-like features, and that's really only achievable with JavaScript. And if you're going to do it that way, you might as well just use a framework. So I'm learning Vue. Spent a good bit of time this weekend getting my laptop set up just to run Vue. I tried to use my old development environment, which was basically a Vagrant box running a server with map drives and stuff, which is how I do PHP development, and I really like it that way because all of my code lives on my machine, and the Vagrant box is just there to act as a server, and I can put host names in my web browser and just automatically, you know, type in a web address, and it acts like a website. Vue is a little different since you really only have, it's a single page app, so you just load the one thing and that's it. You're not loading other pages, which is cool. But it didn't want to work with pass-through anyway. There's reasons it didn't work. So I'm running Ubuntu on WSL, which is a Linux layer for Windows. It's kind of like, if you're on a Mac, it's kind of like running Boot Camp or whatever it's called, or dual booting. I forget what it's called. Parallels. It's like running Parallels on a Mac. Basically, I have an Ubuntu layer running at all times, and I can just, it can be a web server, it can be whatever it needs to be, and it can be a fully fledged thing. So, learning all that, it's really neat. But here's the brain break for me learning Vue. It's like a regression for me, right? I've spent so much time going through it because it's an entirely different paradigm. When you're creating something with Vue or with React or Angular, well, Angular is its own multi-headed beast. Let's talk about Vue and React because they're very similar. When you're building something with those things, you think of things in an individual component state, and they actually call them components. So I have this box on my screen. This is a component, and there's a file that makes this component what it is. The difference is that file contains logic, it contains front end, it contains a little bit of everything, which is just the exact opposite of how I think about software at this point. Especially web software. I've always been a model view client. You have a model, and then you have the view, which is the front end, and then this is a little different. Every component has its own styling and has its own code, data structure. Like it's a very, very different way of thinking, but it's also more in line with like a traditional procedural way of thinking. If I need this on my page, if I need this on my screen, I just include it. It's the same thing like as using include files from the olden days. It works really, really well, and it's really compelling. I'm actually enjoying learning Vue. If nothing else comes from this opportunity, I will have learned a great deal about a modern framework that is in demand, and I can apply that information and that knowledge to future endeavors. But I have to figure out where I'm headed with all of this, right? It's kind of a new scary thing to think that I have this side business. I mean, I've always had it. I've tried various ways to make my side business successful. I've tried Etsy store, I've tried making woodworking stuff, I've tried doing programming, I've tried doing graphic design, game design. I've tried so many different ways to monetize this business, and it's never YouTube. It's never really panned out. This opportunity is there. I think there's a lot of potential, and I'm excited about that. But I also have to figure out how to put it, slot it into my life. I have a day job. I have a 40-hour-a-week job that I could, I like to do. I enjoy the people that I work with. I have compelling work. I enjoy, being a project manager and all that sort of stuff. But where do I slot this other thing in? I don't know. I haven't figured that part out yet. That's the hard part. Like, how do you do that? How do you, and what's the end goal of that? Don't know. And maybe we'll talk a little bit about this week, about how I'm going to approach all of that, because it is a kind of a whoa, right? And I have the kids this week, which means I've got soccer tonight and soccer tomorrow and soccer on Thursday and maybe a game on Wednesday, but I think it got canceled. So there's not a whole lot of evening time for me to devote to something, but that's okay. Like, it is what it is. So the point of all this is I'm learning a new framework, and it's interesting. I'm at least entertained by it. We'll see how it works out if I look at an actual code base. Right now I'm just walking through tutorials. Did you do anything exciting this weekend? Let me know in the comments. Thank you for being here as always. Thank you for liking, commenting, subscribing, being amazing friends and wonderful people. I really appreciate you. And I'll see you again tomorrow. Today's word you should know to sound smart is nondescript. It is an adjective meaning lacking distinction or ordinary. Actors ought to be larger than life. You come across quite enough ordinary, nondescript people in daily life, and I don't see why you should be subjected to them on the stage too. Donald Sinden, a British actor. Nondescript. Nondescript. That's a good word. I mean, I also think it's a pretty common word. Don't necessarily know that's a smart word.